Okay, so we are testing. Right, everyone, and we are back. You know what? I just know that to be as transparent as possible on this podcast. And most people know if you follow us on Instagram, or the Instagram, I am showing my age at this point. If you follow the Women in Between podcast on Instagram or TikTok, you know that this podcast in itself is a labor of love, an act of vulnerability, and a test of my discipline. Because for those of you that listen and have your own podcast, I know there's a few of us out there. So shout out to you guys doing the work in this space. But as a podcaster, the work that goes into not only developing really great content, but making sure that you're delivering a great product and offering a great service to the community and the space that you're serving in. It just requires you to be on it. It is running a business. And as I've also expressed, I decided to kickstart this podcast on a random Tuesday. Not that it was a random thought, but it definitely was just kind of a random launch date. In this past year, it'll be a year, I think in April or May, it has been a process that has shown me how much time it really takes. So I'm always going to celebrate the fact that I am here in this space and that I am here in this space ahead of time, batching content, because I think we all know if you are a content creator, if you live in this world, you know how difficult it is to just get ahead. So let's just jump right on in. I am incredibly excited about this episode because one, it is being released my birthday week, hashtag Pisces season. Like, if you do not have a Pisces in your life, I know they like to say that we're toxic, but the ones of us that are healed and self-aware, we are very empathetic and we are very much in tune with energies and natures. Find you a Pisces, get them in your life. But we're officially in Pisces season, and my birthday is also right during that time of International Women's Month, and International Women's Day is that first week in March. And for those of you that are not as familiar with International Women's Day, it is really a celebration of women's achievement and progress, whether that is culturally or professionally, socially. It's also a really great time to highlight gender equality. I know that we are seeing DE&I removed, but even though you remove it from your mission statement, it is still a real thing. I might have I'm just going to say what I want to say. It's my podcast. But I will say there's also avenues where there is conversation and a platform for gender equality, women's reproductive rights, but it is just a celebration of how amazing women are. And I am a girl's girl, as many of you know, so we celebrate our women. And so I'm like, what better month and birthday? I am turning 35 this year, and I'm not gonna lie, that has really been on my heart heavy, where it's like, okay, this is a big birthday year, and I think we all ask ourselves, right? And I'm sure you do, when it comes to that annual time of the year, and you're like, am I where I want to be or where I envision that I would be? And I definitely know that for me, the answer would be no. But in so many other ways, the answer is yes. So this is really just an opportunity. I want to speak into this space for those of you that are in the process of navigating divorce, navigating separation, whether you're on the front end of it, you're in the middle, or you're at the end, sharing my journey and what that reinvention looked like for me, because I think the side of divorce that they don't talk about, and that you should be really excited about, is the opportunity to reinvent not only yourself, but your entire life, and the relationships within it. So I know I said let's jump in, but we are actually going to jump in now. So when I think about 35 and where I thought that I would be probably 5 years ago, I assumed, I might have 3 kids. I thought that I'd have 3 kids. I would have been married, I don't know, like 10 years. At this point, I probably would have been on, my second home. I would have been a VP or C-suite recruiter of some sort, and traveling with my husband and family and all of the things. And we would go to church and all like that. I had that cookie cutter white fence life envisioned. And when I think about the years that I was married, that's exactly what I was walking towards. Like my life was set up for that dream. And I think it was a beautiful dream. It was really beautiful. And one of the things, like I said before, that I'm so grateful for when it comes to divorce is it's an opportunity to just rewrite a chapter. And because you are going through this traumatic experience, okay, we are back. We are back. I lost my frame of thought, but we are back. But I think that divorce is a really great opportunity for you to reinvent yourself and reinvent the narrative and the way that you see yourself and the people that are in your life. And I think because there is so much trauma attached to it, righteously so, it is a horrible experience that I wouldn't wish on anybody. But I think there's still beauty. And I think that a lot of people wish that they had the opportunity to start over. That's really what my mindset was when I was entering into this space of, and not even consciously knowing that's what I was going towards. I am speaking as if I knew that I was about to go through this whole reinvention. No, I was on the floor crying. I was paralyzed in bed. I was fighting with my relationship with God. So I want to be very clear as I'm saying this. I'm not coming from this standpoint where I had the bandwidth or the space or even the knowledge or tools to sit down with myself and know that I was even in this space or that what I was about to enter into. So I do want to make sure that I'm just setting a realistic expectation. But the way I remember seeing this quote, and it's actually a term as well that I think really defines like Jaleesa before divorce and Jaleesa after divorce and what her belief systems were. And then to more tactically support you, what did I do or what tools are available? Or tricks, tips to really help you navigate what that transition is. And this is for yourself. We are not in this space right now to talk about how you can change him, her, she, they, them. This is not the conversation. This is about you. So I want to preface that I'm not going to spend a ton of times talking about baby daddy, the co-parent, like they can work on them. This is about how do we go through the reinvention process in a way that is healthy for us, that we achieve the life that we want, or we start getting on the path towards the life that we want. But a way that I really like to look at my divorce is they call it a life quake. And they say that is a significant or sudden and unexpected shift in the trajectory of your life that initially feels devastating, but has the beneficial outcome of catalyzing personal growth and transformation and rebirth. And I think when we take out, well, actually, no, I think when we look at that term in itself, I think we all could use a life quake. So I don't think that there is shame if your life quake involved a divorce. And so that's how I really think about it, like before the life quake and after. And so who was the woman in that marriage and in that life stage before the life quake happened? What I think about as far as like what my fears were and what my beliefs were at that time, and even, what just how I showed up in the world during that time was very different. And so I think as you are going through, no matter what your stage is, so you could be in a period of time where you are thinking about separation or divorce. You can be in a part where you might have already filed and you're going through the process. You could have already filed and now you're emotionally dealing with it. Wherever you are in the stage, in the stage of the divorce process, there's going to be some pretty big shifts lifestyle wise. And you can either be doing an assessment of where you are right now, and what your beliefs and what your fears are and what your struggles are. And I would document that. I'm like talking like I'm at work. Journal it, just journal it. No, I don't have a journal prompt. I'm just saying journal where you are right now, note it and remember it. And even if you are through the paperwork, right? Where are you at right now? Or if you are done with your emotional healing on that side of life, where were you? We're actually going to note it because I needed to spend some time thinking about that. And so when I think about, we can just start with my approach towards relationships. And I want you to ask yourself, like, where did you see yourself with relationships in that term? And how did you define them? How did you define successful relationships? I can speak for myself. When I knew that my marriage was ending, I remember calling my best friend and I was venting to her and I was adamant. I knew that I was going, like, I wanted to get married again. I wanted to have more kids. And I was essentially going to recreate the life that I had, but I actually wanted. And I knew that with such conviction. And for the first year, I think that's probably what I was going towards, where I'm like, I'm going to find the husband and then I'm going to find the kids and then we're going to have the kids and we're going to do this blended family. And that's where I thought that's what I wanted to happen. It's just like, we're just going to do this over again the right way. And I was pursuing it. And I think a part of that was I also thought that marriage validated me. And I think a lot of us think that. And I think it's been said on this podcast before. But for those of us that have been raised in heavily religious background, singleness is the waiting room for marriage. Like, you do not come into your purpose. You do not come into like your form of service. You cannot activate your calling unless you are married. And I just want to say, and I think, and I'm actually going to stick to this, marriage is not required. And we'll get to what I have learned and where my beliefs are now. But at the time, I thought that marriage qualified me. And so in order for me to be qualified professionally and personally, I had to be married. And I think also with how I viewed myself, I did not see myself as this powerful person. I did not see myself as a person of influence. I have been very vulnerable on this podcast where I talk about my struggles with finding my self-worth and defining that for myself. So my self-esteem was really low. And if you would have told me that I would be even doing this 5 years ago, I would have never believed you. And so here we are. I'm going and entering into my fourth year of being a divorced single mom, 5 years separated. I can definitely say I'm probably at my most confident. And so I think we deserve to know, right, how did you see yourself, whether it was in the relationship and now you're out of it? How did you see yourself? And how do you see yourself now? And where have there been some wins? Because personal, emotional, mental development is still a win. There's more wins than buying a house, having a baby, and marrying somebody. So being able to change how you view yourself in a positive way is a huge benefit to yourself. And I think two other core pieces was really how I saw myself as a parent. For many of us that were married and had kids in that marriage and had the opportunity to raise kids within that marriage, and then enter to this stage of life where you're now single and either co-parenting, parallel parenting, or full-blown parenting as the sole parent, those are some huge mental shifts. And, every situation is different. So I can't even list the examples, but I think how you view yourself as a parent really changes. And specifically for women, and I think even more so for Black women, a lot of the time you have to sacrifice the nurturing, mothering aspect of parenting for yourself because you are lacking this person in the home. And that can be so detrimental. You end up struggling with depression in some of those areas. And so for me, when I was married right before divorce, I was able to really live in this space of just nurturing my kids, right? Making sure they had all of the right clothes and making sure I planned the perfect breakfast and the perfect birthday parties. That was in my mind like the role that I wanted to play, that very traditional wife, mother role. Because that was also how I was raised. Let's not lie. A lot of the time, our beliefs and how we envision our role as a parent and a spouse is rooted in how we were raised and what we saw. And so I think and a lot of you might be experiencing this now, going from a dual family home to a single parent home. The roles that you're able to activate change. You're not really able to pick and choose which part of parenting you want to take on. You have to take on all of it. And so at the time before divorce, I had no inkling of that. Like in a lot of ways, I felt like a single parent from the physical effort and then the fact that I was carrying the mental load. But what I didn't realize is I still had the opportunity to choose what moments I wanted to participate in because there was another being there to really take that on. And then I think also I was very lax in how I parented my kids and I wasn't really consistent. And I was always the one that's like, no, let them do it. Let them have the extra thing of candy. They don't need to help out with chores. Like they're just children, right? And I think those are some luxuries that you get, but at the same time, looking at it now, not healthy. So I think when you're thinking about, how do I reinvent myself after divorce, you really have to think about what was your foundation and your roots when you were married. And really, even sometimes you have to go back as far as like when you were single before you got married. I had to look at that too and figure out, okay, which pieces of Jaleesa got lost in this marriage that you really enjoyed when you were single? Which pieces did you discover about yourself in this marriage that you now want to take with you in this season of life? So I say all that to say, take the opportunity to reflect on either it's where you are right now because you're in the middle of your life quake, or where you were before because you already exited out of that life quake, and give yourself the credit for the work that you have done to get out of that space or to heal yourself within it. So my life quake or divorce really forced me to reinvent myself. ChatGPT wanted me to say spark. It forced me. My divorce, I feel like, shifted my entire being and in a lot of ways shifted my belief system. And I think that can be true for so many of us, especially, and I keep going back to this because I'm so rooted in it. When your belief system is within the church and divorce is not supposed to exist in that, and you go through it, or for some of us, you might have gone through it once and then you're going through it again. And it just shakes up what you thought marriage was and even how you thought life was supposed to go for you. We all are kind of raised to where it's like I said before, right? You go to school, you go to college, you get the spouse, you get the house, you get all of these things, and life is perfect. And it's just, we know that it's not, right? I'm turning 35, not 25. Or do I look 25 though? Please put that. Please, somebody comment, no, Jaleesa, you do look 25. I need that. It's my birthday. Celebrate me and make me feel good. I'm kidding. I'm saying, right, life is messy and we get a plate that we might not have asked for or we didn't even know it was on the menu. So your life quake could be something else, but I'm going to speak to what I know. So for those of us in the room that have gone through a divorce life quake, it is sparking change. And the biggest question is like, what identity shifts are you going through? And for me, my identity shifts really stem from these spaces that were kind of what society expected me to really kind of go through. So I think there was this expectation of like, oh, Jaleesa, you should be really sad. And oh, Jaleesa, you're not really taking care of yourself. And oh, Jaleesa, you must be looking for a husband. And, that's what society likes to think about, especially when it comes to single mothers. And I definitely think single Black women, like, we just get this badge of woe is me. And for a lot of us, like, no, we want thriving lives. We have the ability. We're well-educated women. We're multi-hyphenated women. We just so happen to marry the wrong person. Like, I feel like I need to say this, like the idea and assumption of who is a single mother is so off. It is ridiculous. And I think we keep thinking that single mothers are like these teenage moms that are all in poverty, and that exists. And there, I get that space as well. But there are also mothers that just so happen to be in the wrong marriage, but they have successful careers. They have great families. Like, this is something that happened to them. Just like sometimes you get laid off, you had no control. And so I feel like I need to say that for some people before we dive into this. There's a lot of societal expectations of how you enter into this period of reinvention. And, some of it you can control and some of it naturally happens. And when I think about what my identity shifts were, I saw a lot of different spaces. The first piece was who I was to certain people completely changed, which I don't know. I kind of feel like worked out in my favor because those were relationships that weren't benefiting me in the first place, but shifting, from the daughter in law or the friend, the mutual friend of my ex husband, like I lost relationships and those relationships, fell to the wayside. People feel like they need to, choose sides. And I get it. And it's just a tough place to be. So no harm, no foul, but who and how you show up in people's lives will change. And I also think when you think about your identity, you're going from being a wife to now you are single, but you're also a mother. And that was the sole reason of why I created this space, because I felt like I went through such a drastic identity shift. And it was very hard for me to relate in spaces because in one hand, it's like, well, I've been married before, so I can kind of speak to that, even though it wasn't fulfilled the way I thought. God fulfilled that himself. But I'm also a mother, so I can speak in that space. And I'm also single, so I can speak in that space. And it's not to say that I know everything, but, my walks of life have kind of crossed me over to different spaces. And I'm incredibly grateful, but I did not feel like I belonged in just one. And so that's where we came up with the woman in between. And so you could be going through that too. You could also have been a stay-at-home mother for 20 years and now you have to go back into the workforce. You have to make a living on your own. You have to start creating a budget. A lot of people don't talk about that. And I do also want to speak to the fact that when you go through that identity shift, especially as a mom and a wife, how you show up as a mother really does change. And I will say that forced me to change my perspective on parenting because we went from a dual parent home to a single parent home. And true to the stereotypes, yeah, my kids do need to help out a little bit more, which for them is good. And it worked out for us because would I have made my kids be more responsible if I were still married? Probably not. And that is personal to me. But it made me kind of raise them with the mentality of like, these children need to be able to be independent because I'm not always around. When you have children that live in a dual parent home, they probably are not around nearly as many people as children that are going to two homes every other week. They could have, up to, I think it could be like 8 different extended families, like, and you don't know who's coming in or coming out. So you really have to raise your kids with the sense of they're not always around you because they aren't. It's not like you're waiting for 18 years. No, right now, like for my kids at 10 and 7, they're not here for days at a time. I cannot, like, I know that they're with their dad. I have no idea who else they're around. So I have to raise my kids with this belief system of like, I need you to be capable of doing age appropriate tasks by yourself. And obviously, if you are here with me and while and if I'm in a space where I can do certain things for you, of course I want to do it. But I need you to know, how to wash your clothes. I need you to know how to pick up your room. I need you to know manners and how to speak to people because I'm not always around you. And that was something that I was not prepared for as someone that was married. And I think I was also having to change my mentality around like what I can pick and choose to show up to. Like, I don't really like to be the disciplinarian, but I don't necessarily have a choice. You know what I mean? Like, so that's something that I had to take on that I didn't really expect. And I think for a lot of women, we have to take that on. And that's why I spoke to the sacrifice that we have to make, because I think you do, no matter how you cut it, you wind up having to sacrifice parts of the softness and maternal piece that you want to give your child, but you can't. And it's not because you're necessarily trying to fill another role, but you are trying to make sure that your children understand certain competencies. Like you have to be able to show them boundaries for them to be able to execute boundaries when they're not with you, regardless. So I'm not saying that you need to play this role, but you do need to teach them core skills for them to be suitable. And some of those skills might not be skills you want to do. Depending on the situation you're in. So I had to really learn, like, Jaleesa, you don't have the option to pick and choose what you show up to sometimes. You don't have the option to just go in your room and block it out. Like, you have to show up. A big incident that changed that narrative for me was not the divorce, but it was my daughter had this like breakdown. She thought that she wasn't going to be able to go to the school Christmas party, and she had forgotten to get the signatures. Like she needed to get my signature, her dad's signature, and she had forgotten to get the signatures, and she just had a breakdown, just crying and upset. And she didn't understand like why she wouldn't be able to go. Meanwhile, me having just talked to her teacher that Friday, like knew that she was fine, and like her teacher loves her. She's doing a great job. She's going to go to this party. And I got to be honest, like, I don't want to deal with the screaming and like trying to de escalate for my friends and like my close friends that know me. I just now got to a point where I know how to like regulate my own emotions, been like the go-to person for this. So seeing her deal with that and having to make sure that I'm emotionally regulated so I can help her learn how to be emotionally regulated, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not really my forte either, but I have to, because who else is? And I spent a lot of time angry with that thought, angry that I had to show up for everything, not just the school plays, but I have to show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, asthma attacks when somebody is nervous at the playground, like fights, if they're fighting in the middle of the living room, I have to show up for everything. If somebody is bleeding or had an accident, I don't get to put my blinders on. I have to show up 10 toes down, ready to respond. And so do you. And if you are in the thick of realizing that, I hope that you give yourself immense amounts of grace and that you don't overextend yourself because you're trying to overcompensate for the role that you did not expect to play. And that's one thing that I had to learn was I didn't need to plan all of these, trips, and I didn't need to wake up at 4:30 trying to make like perfectly shaped sandwiches. And I didn't need to be at every single event. I needed to give myself grace in how I showed up as a single mother, despite the fact that that is not where I wanted to be. And so if you're in that season where you are fighting that battle with yourself and how you show up, and the fact that you have to sacrifice parts of an experience that you really don't deserve to, but if you're battling that, please give yourself grace. You don't have to do it all. It does not start and end with you. And please know, I'm over here talking, y'all, and I have you convinced that I've known this lesson for years, don't I? Psych. The joke is on everybody. I got this about a month ago. Okay, we're going to the next point. But you're going through identity shifts. And I think we always talk about navigating seasons, but you have to notice those shifts and you have to sit with yourself to be able to notice those shifts and be honest where things are going differently than what you planned, and asking yourself, well, what did I have planned and what's happening now and what do I want to happen? So yes, divorce and the life quake is, I was going to say ghetto, but that's not a good choice of words, but I don't have another one. So that's what we're going to go with. So what was the turning point, right? You're probably like, Jaleesa, we know what it was like before, girl, and we know like where you got to, but like, what was the turning point to where it's like, how do I take control and actually rebuild? How do you get up from out of the bed and you stop crying? And I know that is easier said than done, but how do you get to this point where you want better? And I think I always think about the quote that says, like, eventually you just want better for yourself. And I've also had friends that say, like, you don't deserve that type of experience. And we're all going through life experiences. But outside of the mental piece, I want to, well, let's get into the mental piece of it, because that is a big part, because it does start off mentally before you can tactically work through this. So one of the things that I think has been so critical for me this past year has been letting go of what I thought my journey would look like and what I thought right was. Like what I thought the right type of life was, and understanding that that vision was based off a very singular view, and being prepared to create my own vision of what does a right, well fulfilled, peaceful life look like for me in this season, and being brave enough to act on that. I spent a lot of time, and I can think like in a more hands-on way, just as simple as like trying to find another job. I would stay in roles knowing that it was time for me to leave, knowing that I wasn't happy, but because I was so used to making those decisions in a partnership, that I would pause, and I would take my time, or I would slow myself down, or I would create these excuses, when in reality it's like, no, you just have to make that leap. Like, what life you want for yourself. You just have to make the leap. And so letting go of the shoulds, what it should have been, could have went, could have, would, whatever it could have been, it's not that. And honestly, like for those of us that have gone or are going through the divorce route, we know, not only are you thinking, well, like my marriage will be this, and you have to let go of the expectation that your marriage wasn't that. Okay, fine. Then if you have kids, you now have this expectation of what co-parenting is going to be. And guess what? It's not going to be like that either. And you're going to have to be okay with that. And you are going to have to accept what works for you and not what works for everyone else. Another example, I thought, when I tell you the way I thought that me and my ex were going to live down the street, and he was going to just weave in and weave out and get the kids, and we were going to be like a little Kardashian family, the way I was so wrong about that. And I think, although well intentioned, I had the Hollywood definition of co parenting in my head. And so that's what I envisioned. And I was incredibly frustrated those first few years. I don't know, the first few years, the first year for sure. I was very frustrated that first year, because I'm like, well, why isn't it going the way that it's supposed to go on the TV? And it doesn't work that way. I think for a lot of us that have been in the divorce space, when you talk to people, although there are similar themes in what we go through, everyone's situation is completely different. So you can hope that you're going to have a co-parenting relationship similar to somebody, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be that exact version. And I clung to that so long, and my expectations for him were set there as well. So no, everybody was mad. Okay, I'm mad because the expectations are met. He's mad because he didn't even set the expectations. And look at us. So I feel like you have to let it go. What you thought it would be, and the life that you thought you would have. And trust me, like I feel like at 35, I should be just in a very different spot. In some ways, I feel like from a worldly point of view, I have taken some steps backwards, like where I want to be, like pay wise with my job, where I want to be living. But I think that there is something to be said about being able to completely shift your perspective, shifting a perspective that was rooted in beliefs that you spent years creating. Like that is a huge feat. Like not a lot of people can say that they've changed their perspective and their perception of the world in a healthy manner. And so I do sit in that, and I hope that you sit in that as well. But from like a tactical perspective, how do you make that turning point of, this is where I am, in my marriage, and, at the start of divorce, and how do I turn this into something that is going to work well for me and give me the thriving life that we want to live in that season? And we talk about boundaries so much on this podcast, but I want to dive deeper into like what those boundaries look like. And I talked earlier about how your friendships and relationships and how you show up within them change. I think cleaning house is critical. When I think about, or not even think about, when I look at the relationships that I have now, none of them are the same. Even like the friends that I've had for over 15 years, our relationship looks different because that life quake really changed me at my core. But most importantly, like the people really kind of culled themselves out. Like people that were mutual friends, they kind of weaved themselves out of my life. I had one friend that sent me an entire email about how she couldn't be friends with me. And I remember at the time being really devastated because in that season I felt like I needed them. Like for the relation, these were my core relationships before my life quake. So like how exactly am I supposed to get through it? And it actually ended up being to my benefit because now like the relationships that I need at their core, they're relationships that can only operate through community and providing resources. And I'm saying that is to say like I think I had a lot of people around me that were great for like a good time, some great drinks, but when it came to like how I wanted to elevate my life, like if with the podcast or elevating my life career wise from a personal development, like I don't really know how much that was benefiting me. And my season had just changed, right? That what I desired out of life had changed. I now needed resources as a single mother because I was only one person. I now needed community, right? Because I'm only one person. So my needs changed in that. And I had to let some people go to make space for those that would better benefit me. I don't regret that. And I just want to encourage you to just evaluate who is in your life right now and really think about how, when you leave them, how do they make you feel? Because I think another part of that for me was like, I did not want to be around people that wanted to see me sad, that continually wanted me to talk about my hurt and the most traumatic events. That was a huge piece. Like, I knew I didn't want that. I also knew that, I didn't really want to keep a lot of mutual friends. So I had to create my own boundaries with what that looked like. And I also knew like I didn't really want to be the ex-wife coming around for the family events. So that was not a thing for me. So my relationships and my friendships changed. And I feel like a lot of people thought that I was acting different. But in reality, yeah, like when you go through something pretty traumatic, you change. That's just going to naturally happen. So, yeah, I think really evaluating who you have around you. Um, and also, of course, don't be afraid to make those bold, swift decisions. Sometimes they really are what is best. And I also think one of the things that I'm really grateful for that I did was taking the opportunity to dive into what self care looks like for myself, and also allowing that to change. Self care initially started off as like, I need bath, I need pasta, I need wine, I need cheese, I need canned fish, like, I need my nails done, I need my hair done. And don't, now, y'all know if you have seen this podcast, there might be a lot of things that are slipping and sliding and falling off the rails. But Jaleese is always going to have her nails and hair done one way or the other. But you know what I mean? Like taking the time to figure out what I enjoy and like as it pertains to myself, and how do I want to love myself? And I say this all the time, like you have to set the blueprint on what it's like to love you. So if somebody sees, okay, Jaleesa takes herself out to dinner every Friday night, like then you should know we're going out to dinner on Friday nights. Like I'm giving you the rule book. And I think that's romantic and I think that's platonic. And so allowing myself to dive into self-care, but allowing that self-care to change. And that's what I'm excited about for a lot of you is, self-care right now, you might be half a bottle of wine in. No judgment. No judgment. I mean, there's coffee in my cup, But I definitely have been there. Shoot, it might even be a little coffee and tequila. Not in this one, not in this one, but in yours. And there's no judgment with that either. And it might change. My pasta wine nights change to where now I would rather, be at Hot Works or, just watching a movie with my favorite person and doing that. So it has evolved, working out and having lunch with a friend. Whereas I was honestly trying to actively avoid having lunch with a friend like 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. So I'm very grateful for that. And just being very intentional about the experiences that you give yourself. So you have gone through something that has changed you as a being, and you are owed and you deserve, and it has already been fought for you to have an amazing experience in life, and you deserve that. And so lean into it. I'm not saying you have to be outside all the time. You don't even have to go outside, but really leaning into learning yourself. And as always, we give ourselves the grace, because I remember talking to my therapist and being like, I'm ready to be over this. Like, I'm ready to be over the hump. But the best part about the journey, honestly, was getting through that phase of my life. Like, looking back at it, like I talk about making swift and bold decisions, I made a swift and bold decision to take another job, and it afforded me the opportunity to travel more. And, I talked about how those relationships with my friends changed. It changed because I was now able to travel more, and I could travel with them, and I was able to afford to travel with them. And it let me just see, who I was in that setting, and in that just very free flowing setting. And now I'm in a very different season where I want to feel very rooted. And as much as I like want the consistency, I want consistency within my community. I want to do life with people. So I think the turning point was really the mental shift. And I wish like I could say, you need to download this spreadsheet and you need to download this app. And I'm sure I can find that. And you guys know I'm not going to gatekeep on you. I will put the resources in, but I'm always going to say, start with therapy if you can help it. Find community. There's community out there. Just recently, I found community through Gather Moms. They actually have their own podcast. This is not a plug, but I went to one of their events, and just them being able to say, like, your kids are not your enemy was a game changer. So go into spaces that are going to continue to push your mindset to elevate you to where you need to be. That's the entire reason why we are in this space. So hopefully that answers the question of what you can do, and then just what worked really well for me. And I know I've talked about this, right? Like, what does life look like now? So, it's funny because I said when I initially got divorced, I thought that I was going to want marriage and I was going to want more kids, and I'm not going to set anything in stone. And after last year, I have learned, do not tell God what you're going to do. But relationships and dating and the marriage and more kids, one, I don't think that's in it for me right now. But I also don't think that marriage is required to enter into the kingdom of God, and it is not something that I am in active pursuit of. And it is interesting vocalizing that on this podcast, because that concept was something that I genuinely struggled with last year. I actually don't think I've ever said that on here. Last year, I took a pause and I was frustrated. I was really struggling with just like the people that were kind of in my life and the experiences that I even was having like in the dating world. And so I have not been on apps for a long time, very long time. And I have no intention of it at this point. And I took a pause, and that really allowed me some space and energy to really think about, what does a relationship actually look like for me? Because to be fully transparent, I have seen, people move on, and, all I can think is, I don't know if I would want that per se. And you might be going through that season too. And I think it's a wave where you're really ready to go out there. I had that point, but I think for right now, I am really enjoying the opportunity to show up in spaces as a better friend. And last year, God gave me restoration while I was struggling with how I viewed relationships. And so I'm focused on what those friendships look like for me, and how can I be more consistent in them? How can I be more perceptive in those relationships versus me thinking that I need to get married. This is the longest that I have been single, and I am enjoying this season because, yeah, I used to think that marriage qualified me and that until I was married, I couldn't do work or I couldn't activate, on the ideas that I have until I entered into my marriage season. And I now know that to not be true. And I also know that one, like I said, marriage is not required to enter into the kingdom of God. And it doesn't make us better than the other. I think for myself, I idolized marriage. And I think that's part of the reason why I stayed in mine for as long as I did. And I think it can be a very dangerous thing. So I have learned to really look at singleness as a blessing, and the benefits of it. And it has been a freeing experience. And it's one that I did not anticipate. I fully thought that I would be in this space where I'm like, no, I want this. I absolutely have to have it. And I have not been pressed. I am content and I am incredibly grateful for that, especially as someone that used to be very codependent on relationships, romantic relationships specifically. And now I do feel more confident. I am going to brag on myself. I made a commitment last year too that I was going to focus more on my health, and I ended up losing 20 pounds last year. But more importantly, completely changing my lifestyle from an eating habit. And the way I think, if you want to know that you have changed your lifestyle, listen to what people ask you about whenever it comes to like what you're doing or what you're eating. When people start assuming that you're going to the gym, when people start assuming that you're not drinking, when people start assuming that you can't eat at that restaurant because they don't have any healthy options for you, that's how you know. That's how you know you won. And for me, that is really the gauge for like a healthy lifestyle, is when I sit down at dinner with my girlfriends and they're like, is this a sober dinner? And I love that that is now the assumption, or the assumption is like, did you go to the gym today? I genuinely love that, because before I had completely like let myself go. And I'm not even gonna lie to y'all, the way I could kill a bottle of whiskey is insane. So I'm very grateful for that. I take better care of myself. I talk kinder to myself. I think we could all use a little bit more self-compassion. And I'm going to leave that there. And then I think, like I said, my beliefs around being a parent has changed. I expect my kids to do chores and to help out and to be mindful of, how they contribute to society. So my daughter is learning calendar management. That is something that we do every Sunday, where we sit down and we look at, what do you have going on for the week? Where do you need to be? What are you going to need supply wise? And so what do we need to plan ahead for, so I can get her to start thinking that way? Because like I said, they're not always with me. And also giving myself the grace to just show up as a human being and to understand that I am one person. So it's okay if I can't do all of the things. And I hope that you are giving yourself grace in that space too. And then the last place, I think, is a lot of single parents, is it changes how we really envision the type of work that we do. I know for the longest, when I tell you I was trying to scale the ladder in the corporate world and just taking on all of these projects that I didn't need to take on so I could elevate. And now being at this point where I'm like, I just want to be able to work remotely at a job that's honestly going to require little brain power so I can focus on my side projects that's going to pay these bills. Like, really, that is it. And I know that a lot of us have entered into that season where we just want to be able to like pay our bills and live a comfortable life and keep it pushing. Like, I'm not trying to sit up here driving an hour. And I know that makes me sound spoiled, because again, I do understand the having to drive aspect. I do get that. I used to drive from Mesquite to Louisville, for those of my Dallas folks. But at this season in my life, and the life that I want to give myself and my kids. I want to be home, and I want to be able to do my job, and be able to spend time with my family. And the days of me working 14, 16-hour days to prove myself have gone. And then, what was really funny is the other night I had dinner with a friend, and I was just catching her up on life. She had made the comment. She's like, I know that you've been struggling with people pleasing, and you guys know, recovering people pleaser here. And I actually said that as like, yeah, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And she's like, no, not even recovered. You are not a people pleaser. And most of I was a little bit angry around May, June, July last year, and I was frustrated. And I think it taught me, especially as a single person, like you have to bet on yourself, and you're going to have to save yourself in partnership with God, and everything else doesn't matter. And so now I'm like, whatever narrative you need to tell yourself about me, and if that helps you sleep, I want you to sleep good, because I don't want to take anybody's sleep away. And that is a mentality that I wish that I would have had in my 20s. So some say the let them theory. Let them, yes, definitely let them. And also being bold enough in your decisions and knowing who you are. So wow, I'm like, I feel like that should have also been 35 lessons that Jaleesa has learned that I hope to embark on you, so you don't have to learn it. But this is where we landed. And I just really encourage you, one, if you were stuck in this old narrative of what life should have been, and you were clinging on, it is time to write a new story. Yes, pull out the pen. I can create some prompts. If you guys want me to create some prompts, please message me, DM me, put it in the chat, put it in the comments. But it's time to let that story go. It's time to and when I tell you it is hard, and I have had to let go, like remove the name of shame when it comes to my divorce and being a single parent and how I show up in these spaces, it's time to let it go. Stop replaying it. It's time to write something else. And I want us to think about, what is one action step that we can make today that is going to set us towards reinventing our lives? It could be you want to change something that you eat. It could be you want to get some movement in today. It could be you want to take a long bath. You want to call a friend. You might want to do your meal planning or your calendar planning for the week. You know what I mean? Or do you just want to sit and read your Bible, boo? Is that too? It can be that simple. But what is one action step today that is different from the version of yourself that you left? And I do really want to make sure that I say this, because it was really helpful for me. And I had a mentor that told me this, and she had been divorced 5 times, and had finally found her Mr. Right, but more importantly was living the life that she dreamed of and that she earned. And she had read to me Ecclesiastes 3:11, and it is, He makes all things beautiful, and it's all the time. And so I just always talk about seasons here, because the only constant in life is change. We never stay in one season for long. We're in it for a moment, and we're supposed to take what we learn from it and use it to produce good fruit. So this is just a season. This is just a moment, and we are gathering the tools that we need to elevate ourselves and to be better versions of ourselves. The past couple of seasons, I feel like sometimes I've been late 5 seasons in 1 month. But this season that we're entering into for 35, and the season that I'm entering into just generally, is being one of leading into community and providing resources. And so in the name of community and resources, and the fact that it's my birthday, I'm not just celebrating another year, I'm also celebrating, right, the woman that I've become. And if there is a season of transition, I want you to know your reinvention's waiting for you. But I want to hear your reinvention story. What did you get yourself out the depths of? And how did you heal yourself in partnership with God? I want to know. And I want to know how you're rewriting this next chapter of your life. And I want to share that in this community, or we can just share it together. So for those of you guys that are navigating the divorce space, my heart is with you. I pray that God covers you in peace and favor, and He brings just the right people around you that can create a safe space for you. So until next time, happy International Women's Day month. Happy Pisces season. We are here, and I will see you guys on the next episode.